Welcome to the Rural Recharge, a podcast of the Florida Farm Bureau Federation. Rural Recharge is a guided conversation that allows you to cut through the noise and multitude of information out there. You should be able to trust your sources, which is why we're a platform that comes straight from the source, the farmers and ranchers growing what we eat, wear, and use every day. Well, our guest today is a very special one, and it's Mr. Danny Johns, owner of Blue Sky Farms in Hastings, Florida. Danny is a lifetime potato grower and an innovative farmer and a visionary Florida agriculturalist, mainly focusing on potatoes and illustrating a lot of things that he's able to do. He's involved with different varieties as well as different technologies. And I'm excited to have Danny today because we have a lot in common. And one of those things that we do have in common is family. And Danny's great-grandfather is actually my great-great-grandfather. So we go back to farming here in Hastings together. He's a cousin, a neighbor, and a very good friend with very deep roots here in Florida agriculture. And I just want to say that today, likewise, Danny is our 1 year anniversary guest for Rural Recharge podcast. And I want to thank our listeners for joining us for our pilot year. It's been one to remember, and we look forward to many more episodes here coming up. Danny, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, it's quite an honor, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
Well, tell us a little bit about your farm, and then maybe a little bit about your history, a family history here in Hastings.
So Blue Sky Farms was started in 1987. Worked with my brother Frank Johns before that. He was 8 years older than I was. He was my mentor all the way through and gave me my work ethic and the love of farming. So we've been, 1987 started. We started off as a chip potato farmer, and we've evolved into table stock now and specialty varieties. We're farming around 500-600 acres a year of potatoes, and love what I do. I'm fourth generation here in the Hastings area, and I didn't pay attention to school, so I'm here also.
But Hastings is known as the potato capital of Florida. And how did Hastings end up being a potato capital?
It's really interesting. You look at I was thinking the other day how many farms there used to be hundreds of potato farms in this area. And my great-grandfather, your great-grandfather came from Rockford, Illinois. On my mom's side of the family, the Brewbakers, they came from Ohio, and they actually came on covered wagons. So the pioneer spirit and leaving what you know and coming to a new area to farm, it was quite an undertaking and quite an exciting adventure.
So most people may not even know where Hastings is. Now, we've got some listeners that may be around the world, and so Hastings is very uniquely located in north central Florida, and on our western border is the St. Johns River, and on the would-be east side, not too far away, is the Atlantic Ocean. Does that give us a little bit of an advantage too?
It definitely does, the microclimate, and also St. Augustine's about 20 miles from here, so it's the oldest permanent settlement in the U.S., European settlement in the United States. So we've been feeding European civilization since 1565. So it's kind of a neat history and legacy here. And Hastings was established with Henry Flagler back in the day to feed the railroads and the motels that he had established. So that was when Hastings first came into effect, and great land, flat land, irrigate. We have a hard pan so we can irrigate very easily. Artesian wells, good water, and the microclimate being between the St. Johns River and the Atlantic Ocean has been a unique area also.
So you say we got a hard pan, so our irrigation's pretty unique, our drainage is pretty unique as well. So explain how that works. A lot of people don't understand. We use seepage irrigation, which is very different than a lot of other places. Tell us a little bit about that.
So the hard pan is a spodate layer 2 to 3 feet down below the surface, and so the water will go down to that point, and then it percolates laterally across the bed. So the early farmers would fill ditches up using artesian wells in the area and be able to irrigate. And you have all our ground now has been laser leveled. And one of the problems is it's flat wood, so we get too much rain, it's hard to get rid of it. So there's been a lot of evolution in our irrigation techniques, and tile drain, one of the latest ones. But there's been, originally we started off with ditches, so you fill the ditch up, run it down through the field, it runs out a ditch at the other end. All that was done by hand back in the day, as my dad was fond of telling me. But and then we came up with, in the 70s, when I first started farming, they started with pipelines and putting a PVC pipe in the ground to where you'd run a nozzle to each row. So that saved a lot of the evaporation and loss of water there, so it increased efficiencies. I think it said about 50% at the time.
Yeah, that's right.
And then, so that lasted for a pretty good while. We've laser leveled all the fields and have new improved techniques to maximize our productivity. And then the latest one has been the tile drain, which is a French drain underneath, and it's actually a subsurface terrace that you can back the water up. There is no water exposed to the air, so you don't have any evaporation from it, which is saved another 50% on our water usage, 50 to 60% again. So, and it gives you a lot better control over your irrigation system, and so which for potatoes is very important to make sure you keep the right water level and for quality and for productivity.
So on potatoes, give us a little bit of background. When do you start planting? When do you harvest?
As in most farms, we have one shot a year to paycheck, so I got a banker with a good sense of humor. So we plant in right after Christmas in January, and our harvest starts in April, good Lord willing, and no late freezes and things. April, May, June is our typical season there. We've tried some fall potatoes sometimes. It's a little bit tricky. All of our potatoes, we don't store anything. It's so hot down here in May and June. So we dig them, harvest them, ship them. We have a unique window. They start in South Florida. Right now they're harvesting, which is February, March, and then moves up to North Florida. And then the market goes on to North Carolina and up the East Coast. So you have a marketing window. And Florida usually has a unique situation because we have the first new potatoes coming in. Right. Eagle Snacks used to be one of my biggest customers for chips, Anheuser-Busch. And the buyer always said that when the new Florida potatoes came in, the attitude in the plant in Robertsonville, North Carolina, or Hastings, Massachusetts, the whole attitude in the plants changed because the quality of the potato was so much better than the storage potatoes.
And that's an interesting thing, especially because the potato begins to change a little bit in storage. It goes from a starch to a sugar, and it definitely has a lot of impact on the fryers and all. That's why the attitude changes. They love Florida potatoes.
They do, and with the new evolution of things, too, there's new varieties of potatoes now that you can store colder. So there's been a lot of competition. Freight is one of the biggest disadvantages we have here because most of the chip factories are up in the Pennsylvania area in the Northeast and the North, where it's closer to the storage potatoes. But so with the new varieties they have, it's kind of put a hurting on our contract. So the chip deal has been dwindling. I got kicked out of the club at a younger age, so I wound up going into table stock, which when Eagle Snacks sold out, they got out of the salty snack business. That left just Frito-Lay and Wise and some of the independents at that point. They want to get down to fewer, bigger growers, fewer and fewer, so the writing was on the wall then.
And so you transitioned as a chip grower, which is very different than a table stock grower. And table stock potatoes are what most people would be familiar with, especially in the produce aisle. And some of those are reds and whites and yellows are very common. But you grow a lot of varieties, and some of those others they may be familiar with as well. Tell us how many varieties do you grow, Danny? And then what are they?
It's kind of a moving target for what we grow. The main varieties that we do are reds, whites, and yellows like you get in the chain stores. And then we also do purples, fingerlings, yellow fingerlings, purple fingerlings, red fingerlings. And then a lot of market is moving to the mini potatoes now, so that's been a new niche market that's been really growing. And so we do a lot of different varieties of those too. And it takes different cultural techniques and all to to get the maximum yield on the mini potatoes. And it's really a challenge to get your harvesting equipment to get these. When I started, the first year I grew Austrian crescents, which fingerlings are very oblong and skinny. So we went out and harvested my first crop, and I sent the crew out to pick them up off the ground after the harvester went through. And we left half of them in the field. But we've since modified the equipment and things to where it'll pick them up, and does a really nice job. I'm proud of it now.
Well, you not only have the production side, you're very, very involved with the packing side as well. And you do some, we're sitting in your conference room here, and you've got it right outside this door is a tremendous amount of investment to be able to put that product in a pack that goes to the retailer. Tell us a little bit about that side of it as well, because it's very impressive.
Well, I appreciate that. It's a lot of work of love, labor of love, but we've constantly evolved trying to be the best for our customers and do the best quality and the best consistency that we can. But you look at the traceability and things, so we've got a person on the computer now, and we track all the seed through, so it's added a lot of different layers to it. And that's one thing that I'd like to mention here is the U.S. consumers, we have the safest, cheapest food supply in the world.
Absolutely.
And it's from the growers that are providing that.
The traceability is one thing, and that is extremely impressive. That's technology that you are engaged with. You can trace it from your seed to somebody's table. Is that correct?
Absolutely, and all the packaging has it on there. So, and for our customers, Costco, Publix, Winn-Dixie, for our customers out there, that's part of the price of doing business, and we want to make sure that they have confidence in us, so that the consumer can have confidence in us also.
Danny, I'm proud of, in regard to our family, is it's been technologically advancing for many, many generations. And one of the things is, I certainly, back at, we were recognized to be in August 1930 as to be the first horseless farm in the state of Florida. Tell us a little bit about that.
To me, that's awesome. I'd always heard of this mythical article out there about, great-grandpa and coming in and had a picture of grandpa and great-grandpa on the tractor. And it gave great-grandpa's rationale behind getting rid of the mules and how much more efficient he was and how much he figured he could increase production and to be more sustainable.
That's right.
So it's kind of neat to see that back then. And I use that article a lot too. We have people come in, and one challenge we have as growers is people don't really respect or have an appreciation for what we do and the knowledge that farmers have. And that comes from lifelong of learning and a lot of sunrises, making a lot of mistakes, sunrises, sunsets, and learning from what's happened, what happens on a freeze after it's dry, or freeze after it's wet, and what you do with these things. But to me, it's an effort to try and educate. That's why I appreciate this opportunity. Anything we can do to educate the public on where their food comes from, I think, is critical for farming's future and success.
And so that technology's continued forward. We went from horses to tractors, from basically V-ditch irrigation and drainage to drain tile, from shipping a lot of our product in barrels off to then now in poly, very small packs at 3 pounds or even less. And there have been a lot of advantages. One thing I think is impressive too is coming to labor. Labor is something that you've had to address too, because this could be a very labor intensive business and industry. But one of the things you have is some OptiSort technology on your packing line. It's very impressive.
Yeah, that's a neat piece of equipment. Anything you can do to be more efficient on the farm. Labor is one of my larger challenges. We're using a lot of H2A labor now.
Mm-hmm. Explain what that is, what H2A labor is.
So H2A labor is they're guest workers that come to the country. They get a visa to come in, and it's a work permit. So they come in, they work for X amount of time for the crop, and then they go back home again.
That's right.
And to me, that's critical that we have a good workable guest worker program to where we do have labor available. It's very challenging. It's hard. Farming is very hard work, and it's hard to get people that are willing to do that kind of work anymore. So it's really important that we have workers available to us. And it needs to be economical too. The price point of this has gotten really high now on how much per hour is costing us, because there's adverse wage rates and a lot of different regulations that fall into this. So that's the challenge, is keeping your input cost in. Inflation on a farm, just everything we're doing is really increasing our cost, and it's been one of our bigger challenges. Price of a tire, price of oil, price of fuel, labor cost, just everything out there, because it all got to be shipped in and trucked in, and our seed and everything else too. So it's all adds to our bottom expenses, and are we going to get more money for it?
Answer that question.
Yeah, that's the challenge, is whatever is market driven. So we do not set prices, no matter what our costs are. Is based off of what the market will bear, and how much productivity is out there. So that's kind of a unique perspective. Just because we're investing more in a crop on a certain season, it doesn't mean we're going to see those benefits come back.
Danny, I know because I've been there, but there's a lot of risk. And I mean, there's a lot of money sitting in the field that could be literally washed away in one thunderstorm. Explain just a roundabout figure on a cost per acre. You said 500 to 600 acres a year. What's the cost per acre to grow an acre of table stock potatoes average for your farm, Blue Sky Farms in Hastings, Florida?
It was around $5,000 an acre. It's more like $6,000 now, honestly. And to me, that's one of the things too, that the risk out there, and people say farmers are like Vegas. You might as well go to Vegas and do it. The job of a farmer, my definition of a farmer, is a risk mitigator.
That's right.
So how do you take all these seemingly insurmountable risks, rains, diseases, everything else you have, unknown markets, and how do you tweak it to your advantage every chance you get, to where you're coming out to where you're more of the house? And that's one thing we're proud of too. For 4 generations, our family's still involved in agriculture, and to me that shows resilience and perseverance, and just loving what you do. Absolutely,
you love it. Yeah, I think it's one of your favorite things is I love my job. I love my job. I love my job.
Usually I say that facetiously, but as a joke. But it is very enjoyable. A lot of satisfaction, a lot of challenges in farming, but. You need to have a very diverse skill set, and it's in everything, in leadership skills and things. I was fortunate enough to go through the Wedgeworth Leadership, University of Florida, and just trying to hone my skills, because in regulations and things, how do you articulate what your needs are? We've been working with the University of Florida on fertilizer recommendations and things too. It's kind of interesting thing. The research farm in Hastings, Florida, there is IFAS, Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences research farm here in Hastings. It was established in 1923. So you kind of, I joke about what kind of tractor did they have back then. Well, that was back in the mule days.
That's right.
And how important agriculture was to an agrarian society. But to me, it's always been exciting. I've always been proud that the growers are the first ones to come in and work with the scientists to try and learn new things. Right. And honestly, the scientists have just as much to learn from the growers too. So it's a two-way street, and to improve our efficiencies and our craft, we need to have science and practical knowledge too, to know what works and what doesn't, and then work together to make improvements on that. It's taken me a while, but I've changed my motto of my farm. I was a 4-H'er as a kid, but to me the best motto in the world, and what sums up what a farmer does, is to make the best better.
That's right.
It's never good enough.
Well, I tell you, you're extremely diverse skill set. And I know you personally, and just you're a mechanic, an engineer, a strong businessman, a chemist, and a botanist, all kinds of different things that you become an expert in, technologies in regard. I remember one day we were talking and doing land leveling, and you were utilizing calculus to be able to make sure that the machine was doing exactly what it was supposed to. And you're very cognizant of what's going on in the industry, and an innovator, and you've been recognized for some of that as well. And one of the things that I think and I'm proud for you of is you were awarded the Commissioner's Ag Environmental Leadership Award, and also a Florida Farm Bureau Cares recipient, and taking some of your education, your experience, which is invaluable, and taking and implementing that and furthering things for the betterment of ecological and environmental systems as well is outstanding. Tell us what it means a little bit to be receiving those kinds of awards and being recognized for it.
Well, it was quite an honor. To me, my most valuable asset, how do you put this much money in the ground year in, year out? My most valuable asset is my land.
That's right.
So the last thing I would do anything to jeopardize the productivity. I raised my family on the farm here, so everything we do revolves around the land. So it's what feeds me, and I'm going to take very good care of it. To me, it's really important that I'm a surfer, love to fish. So everything with the water.
Very important.
The St. Johns River is a National Heritage Waterway, so we've been under federal guidelines for years too. So everything, all of our drainage basin goes into the St. Johns River. So we've been under close scrutiny for a long time. And I've found it's better to be a part of it. To me, if we're trying to solve pollution in the river and farmers are the cause, well, let's just stop putting out fertilizer. To me, that's a tongue-in-cheek, or that's not the answer to anything, of course. To me, is how much fertilizer farmers are putting on the land. Is that the issue? Or is it how much it's making it to the waterway? So what can we do differently? You have to have fertilizer to farm. So how do you reduce the risk of it going into the river? And that's where identifying the problem, so just eliminating loads of fertilizer going to a farm isn't the answer, because you need fertilizer on the farm. So identifying the actual issue is water quality, and then finding out where the actual source is. To me, I think farmers are such an easy target. Well, this is agricultural pollution and runoff and things. And we fought that stigma for years, and I think it's really important being at the table that actually identifying what are the issues and be a part of the solution. Is it septic tanks? Is it, what are the other out sources of pollution that are actually into the river, and identifying it. And to me, let's get to the brass tacks, find out what everybody's part in is, work together to improve our water quality. And farmers have a key part of it, and I'm definitely going to do everything I can, because I got a nice brim bed out there at one of the farms at Federal Point that I love to fish on, so I want to take care of those little brims.
Absolutely. Well, and I think too, you mentioned it here. We got a crop that's extremely expensive to grow, and you're looking at very narrow margins because you're a price taker, not a price maker, and thus, and ultimately, you want to have the greatest amount of efficiency. You don't want to put out more than necessary. So it has to be the right amount in the right place at the right time, and in the right manner, so that it is used efficiently. And you've come up with some really cool things to do that. You've innovative. We already talked about drain tile. That's really neat. But also in fertilizer application. And tell me a little bit about, you've changed your production methods to be able to accommodate that, to be able to put the right amount in the right place at the right time and in the right way. Tell the audience a little bit about what you've done, within the last 10 years. It's really cool stuff.
It's really interesting, because a lot of to me, we're just scratching the surface of agronomy and soil science and things about what's out there. Our soils test very high in phosphorus in all of Florida. So we've been recommended that we don't ever put out extra phosphorus. There's plenty in the ground already. And if you do put out phosphorus, put it out early. And just within the last 5 years, I would say, we found that the phosphorus is there, but it's tied up with iron and aluminum and all different metals in the soil, calcium. So even though the phosphorus is there, it's not available to the plants. So being a part of the studies with the University of Florida and seeing why are we seeing a yield response to when we apply phosphorus, the recommendation is not to apply any, and if you do, apply it early. So to me, I've changed my application. I have a polyphosphate, which is a liquid phosphorus I put out at planting. We used to put it out a month before planting. And then I apply phosphorus 2 more times, so you're spoon feeding it as we go. And to me, I was giving a talk one time, and I told people I applied fertilizer 4 times, and there's several gasps in the room. Well, why would you do that? I didn't have the critical information. Well, how much are you applying, and is it at the right time that you need it for the plant growth? And we're learning a lot. Every different variety of potatoes I grow has a different nitrogen fertilizer requirement, so they're all unique. And one size fits all has been the regulation that's become down to us. Potatoes can use this much, this much, this much. And to me, to be a part of that and show people that there are better ways to do it, and what do we need to do to work together to make it viable where we can stay sustainable.
And you just mentioned something that's very interesting because it's changed. And you said we used to just put it all out early, a month early, and then now you have 4 applications, and that means more trips through the field, which is more cost, but it ends up with better savings because it's more efficient. And it's kind of an interesting dynamic. Even though you make more trips through the field, it's actually being better for the bottom line, but also for the environment, for what's about us, and utilizing a resource that is going to be scarce at one point.
Absolutely. When we give a tour, we've done regulatory tours here, and I had our fertilizer dealer drop a fertilizer trailer out there. It was empty. I said, isn't it cool? I can call up and I can get a 42,000 pounds of fertilizer delivered tomorrow. But the tough thing is, about 10 days from now, I'm going to get a bill in the mail, $12,000, $15,000, whatever that load cost. It wouldn't be cool if I could cut back on one or two of those loads a year. Why would a farmer apply anything else that's costing him money than he absolutely needs to on the farm? So.
And also, I think we've not only with UF-IFAS, we have some working relationships there, but also with the water management and some cost share. They've helped to cost share with the tile drain, but also with banding equipment, things like that too. Do you use banding for your crop?
We do, definitely do, especially when we were doing the furrow irrigation. But now with seep irrigation, there are no water furrows out there, so there's roots on every square inch of my land.
That's right.
So broadcast is actually working better. But to me, that's one great outcome from working with everybody is we have a TCAA, Tri-County Agricultural Area is who we are, and it's a partnership.
That's right.
It's a partnership between Water Management District, FDACs, farmers, EPA, DEP. Who am I missing, Jeff? There's a lot of folks there. In the past, farmers have always had a seat at the table, but we were supposed to listen and listen to the experts and things. But now I think there's a mutual respect from amongst everybody. We all see we're part of the solution, and working together is the best way to get the most tenable results.
And I think that one of the things that happens, though, is if a farmer's no longer farming, it's pretty easy that it becomes houses, doesn't it? It's no longer in agriculture, and the open green space and the wildlife, the benefits, and the things of open, I'd just say clean air, et cetera, is gone and will likely be gone forever. And is that some pressure that you're seeing too? Is you said your greatest asset is your land, and I know because I know you take care of your land, and you own some beautiful property, some very, very good productive land. But here we're in St. Johns County, which is the oldest European settlement, permanent European settlement in the United States, the continental United States, and we are between the St. Johns River and the Atlantic Ocean. It's an enviable place to live, and there's a lot of pressure from developers and development to come in and to buy some of this land and put it in houses. And have you felt that pressure?
Absolutely, and the older you get, the more risk averse you get. Or if you're,
That's right.
You do think of things differently at different ages and things. But to me, it's really important to maintain the land, the green space, and actually, environmentalists and farmers used to be, although farmers are environmentalists, but right. Used to be fighting against each other. But to me, they were going to be the best allies at a point, because you need green space, you need to eat, and the alternative of housing is not very attractive. Usually takes me about a half hour to get to the beach. Like I say, I love to surf, but with all the people moving into St. Augustine, it's going to take me an hour and longer. So it's just our way of life is going to change here.
Danny, too, it's not just you getting to the beach, but getting your equipment around. And I mean, you don't farm just one spot. You farm in several different spots in 2 different counties too. Is that a challenge too, and do you find that to be more and more challenging?
It truly is, and our our sheriff's office in Putnam and St. Johns County have been very good. We have, helping us escort our wider equipment and things like that. We're looking at getting some goosenecks or flatbeds to where we can haul it on, lengthwise to try and avoid the risk. Because if anybody has an accident, it reflects badly on all of agriculture. And right. To me, it's to be a good steward of your area and everything, to be a good neighbor, we got to be as safe as we can. And it's more and more challenging. Land prices are through the roof. I've lost a couple of pieces of ground recently. Can't compete with potatoes for the prices they're getting for it. So it's an interesting dilemma we're in right now.
It is, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. It doesn't seem to, but people, we're having well over 1,000 people moving, just shy of 2,000 people moving to Florida a day. It's a popular place, and unfortunately, we're on that interstate. I-95 comes through St. Johns County and down into Flagler County, which is both members of the Tri-County agricultural area, and it's popular. What just changed gears a little bit, and not only have you, here locally been very involved, but also nationally, you've been involved in a lot of different things and different groups and organizations to promote agriculture and to promote potatoes as well. Tell us a little bit about that.
I've been very fortunate. My brother Frank, like I say, my mentor, he got on the United States Potato Board as representative for Florida. And after he served on it, he got up to executive committee and all that. And he really pushed me to be involved with my future, basically, have some input into what we're doing. So he got me on the United States Potato Board, which is a promotional board for potatoes.
Absolutely.
And so I served 6 years on there and got on the executive committee and met a lot of great growers from around the country. And after I turned out on that, I went to National Potato Council, which is the regulatory side. They're in Washington, D.C., so doing a lot of the legislation issues and things too. So being a part of, I've always gotten more out of being a member of the organizations than I bring to it, I feel, because there's some really sharp people in the room and you learn tons. And like I say, to have some effect on what your industry is and have some, how to be that risk mitigator too, to turn the house in your favor a little bit more, you got to show up to do it.
Absolutely. And that's important for our young people, and especially our young farmers to understand, is that we need to be involved, and not only in the local community. And I know it's hard because we're so focused on what we're doing on the farm, but what happens in Washington, D.C., what happens in regard to promotion definitely affects us at our farm gate.
And that's a member of FFVA also, and how does Blue Sky Farms afford to have lobbyists and engineers and things? But if you're a member of these trade organizations, Farm Bureau, how do you, when you're a member of it, through the group, you have a lot more clout and power, or you're able to hire very good people that can represent you. But they need grower leaders to help direct where the focus is.
That's it, and it is important. It's very important, and it's neat because Farm Bureau works so well and so closely with FFVA, the Florida Fruit and Vegetable Association, and along with our other commodity groups, because we all are in this together, and we need a collaborative voice. And we're a minority, less than 2% of the population. It's just amazing that the need and the minority, and yet we feed not only our own nation but an entire world. And people need a farmer 3 times a day, and that's an important matter. And it's like you said too earlier, Danny, is that the U.S. farmer grows the world's safest, most affordable, and abundant food supply, and that is so important to remember. But also, the average age of the U.S. farmer continues to increase, and we're at 57 almost 58 years of age now as the average U.S. farmer. That's not a very encouraging thing. We need young people to get involved in this industry, but with increasing land values and height of risk, increase of cost of operations and labor issues, etc., it's certainly not attractive, is it?
I would hate to have to think had to start over again from where we're at. So we've built everything individually. So it's very challenging. So to me, a young farmer would have to be have somebody that kind of help them up on to get started.
And so anybody could come talk to Danny Johns and you'd be glad to help them.
Come on down. Come on down. Absolutely.
Well, I tell you what, I enjoy your passion for it. You've always been very positive about agriculture. You love it. And it is in your blood. It's under your fingernails. It's something that a lot of us younger people have admired for a long time, to see what you've taken and really from a very raw sense and turned it into something to be. Blue Sky Farms is a moniker that's very well known in this area as well as in this state and around the nation because of who you are and what you've done. And it is a beautiful day at the Blue Sky, and the attitude is positive, and it's always been uplifting and encouraging. And I thank you for what you do, and thank you for taking time to be with us to share a little bit about your passion with our audience, because it's contagious, and there are challenges, but what you do, and you've always found a way to find a way out of it. And I just want to say thank you, and thank you for your time.
Well, I appreciate this, and it's always an honor to talk and be a part of something like this. And we love to educate. That's the most important thing. So thank you for the opportunity.
Well, we thank you all for joining us today. It's Danny Johns, Hastings, Florida, Blue Sky Farms. Have a blessed day. Thank you for supporting the Rural Recharge podcast. We hope that you're enjoying these conversations brought to you by farmers for our neighbors. While you're here, please consider giving us a rating or review. It really helps us to continue to share the story of our Florida farm families and their important impact on our local communities. Thank you.